weed every day.
What? Welcome everybody to Wrestling Memories episode 35. I am your host. God damn it, get out. Go. No. Oh, I am your host, Johnny Sinizter, and we're in that. What? I'm going to do a show. Go on. You can't do this time. All right. So we are now on episode 35, Building an Army. Well, with me as always is Mr. JP Becker and the Tattooed Mistress. How you guys doing?
I am doing great. Just had some fucking lasagna. It's fucking delicious. Next time I'll invite everybody over, but you still can't have none because you live too far away. No, it was really good. She did a really good job. I'm gonna give her praise.
And right above my head is the man that knows just about everything useless on the planet, Mr. Trekapedia. How you doing, Trek?
Good. How are you guys tonight?
Doing pretty good. Good talk. And sitting off screen in my lower right-hand corner is none other than the Bobs, the big Bobs, Mr. Foulmouth Bobbitt. What's going on, Bobbitt?
Pretty good. Got my WWE 2K19 pre-ordered, and yeah, let's see how about I can bury JP.
Oh, good Lord! Here we go.
Yeah, sure, whatever. That's what they all say. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Nobody buries JP like a midget. So anyway, this episode focused more on WWE's and WCW's, more the undercard, or mid card, whatever you want to call it, and how they played kind of an integral role in the rise and the success of WWE, and one of the reasons why WCW did so well for a while. You had guys in WCW like DDP, Booker T and his brother, Harlem Heat, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio. These guys, Chris Jericho, these guys made up your mid-card, your undercard of WCW. And one of the things I always found interesting is that one of the things they talked about, especially when it came to WCW's mid-card, was how some of the undercard were taken into the NWO. And this is when they started adding a lot of members to the NWO. And Josh Matthews said it, that if you got put into the NWO, you were already kind of a star because of the fact that you were pretty much hanging around the main event talent.
Yeah, you're How did he say? How did the exact words is? I think it was your relevancy within the company went up.
Went up, and at the time, Eric Bischoff's motivation for doing this was that he couldn't have good guys unless he had really strong heels, and NWO was kind of that heel faction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in hindsight, was it a mistake to go with that formula, or is it realistically one of those things that we could not see? There's no way to really tell if that would have played out as well if they had done it right.
Say that question one more time. Sorry.
If my question was, do you think in hindsight that this was a very big mistake on Bischoff's part, or is it, given that the time when he started doing it, if he would have kept it that way, would it have been as much of a detriment to WCW as it wound up being?
I don't know. I think, but what are you talking about? The roster itself?
Right, that how he had like the NWO as his heel faction, and he was building up the WCW guys as, you know, the basically the baby faces.
It was working, and then, like we've talked about, you kept adding fucking people. You kept adding people, and it got up to 20 people. Then you had to split the faction in half. They tried recreating the NWO. Everybody was in the fucking NWO, so they split the NWO in half, which made no fucking sense. So, in a sense, the way he had it going at first, with having the 3 or 4 guys, maybe 5 at the most, 6, no more, was good enough. He didn't need to keep adding fucking Scott Steiner and fucking, then he ended up adding fucking
The Giant.
Conan. He added it. Well, the Giant was a okay.
Giant was actually was the first one to join the NWO outside of the original 3.
Yeah, and they should have either stopped there or brought in an X-Pac to be in the cruiser or the light heavyweight division or cruiserweight division, where they called it on WCW, so that they had somebody within each, you know what I'm talking about. They had a tag team, they had a cruiserweight, they had a heavyweight champion, you know, a top guy that they could fight, so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, that would have been fine right there, but then they started adding everybody, which it just diluted itself and ruined the product. So yes, Bischoff was wrong. What he was successful with killed him.
Anybody else have anything to add?
Not really. I mean, you said it all right there.
Sorry.
Trek?
It also didn't help that they never got their comeuppance. Every time they lost, they just came right on back and started beating the crap out of somebody, or if they lost, or if they had thrown lose, they just brought them on in, and it didn't help.
Well, they did get their comeuppance.
Yeah, eventually they did. Like, realistically, the Big Show actually got put over Hulk Hogan and was champion for a while. And so, therefore, a while, their homegrown talent was getting that spotlight. DDP is a good example. He was sort of the first babyface to really start going after the NWO. Which, to me, I always loved DDP. During his time in WCW is one of my favorite times to watch him. And they had interesting storylines back then, and when it was sort of that era. And then, of course, you had Booker T and his brother in Harlem Heat, and they were dominating the tag team division at the time. It was a really good tag team. However, the problem is that you had 9 guys that had creative control. And you could not really get, these guys had that proverbial glass ceiling that they could not break.
Right.
Now, counter to this, the WWE did something similar to what WCW was doing, but they did it with multiple people. And it was very small factions. You had the Nation of Domination, D-Generation X, the Heart Foundation. The list just goes on and on. And it was a way to get these undercard guys on TV and give them story. Looking back on it, in your guys' opinion, who had the better undercard stories?
To start, WCW did.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they progressed, they became more and more about the WWE because that's what was getting the ratings. Because again, I keep going back to this. With the war, it was all about fucking Monday night and what ratings they were getting.
Right.
So later on, as Vince started creating newer characters, and they said this like 4 or 5 times in this fucking, they've said it 100 times in this. As Vince started creating newer characters and started developing newer talent, they started taking over. So all those undercard guys started going up, and they stepped up to the plate in a sense, is what I'm saying.
Right. There was more camaraderie on the WWE side of things than there was with WCW.
Right.
What about the rest of you guys?
Honestly, the WWE did it a little better at the end because of the fact that, again, as you said, there was the camaraderie. But it was also because they knew how to work as a team a little better. Despite the fact that so many jumped ship to go to WCW, you still had these newcomers coming in and these fresh faces that sat there like, okay, I could work great with you, I could work great with you, let's make this work.
Right.
Bobbitt?
I'm going to go with WWF because when I started watching wrestling, that's when the WWF was starting to have the better undercard stories. So I'm going to go with that.
All right. Check.
I think WWE did because they had stuff like the Heart Foundation where it's like you wanted to see what was going to happen with those guys.
Now, for me, like during this time, I was more of a WCW guy back then. But I will admit this: to me, even in the beginning, I was more interested in the top line storyline of WCW than I was their undercard. Now, WWE was different. I actually really loved their undercard stories. Like I said, one of the best storylines that they told during that time was Kane and Undertaker.
Yes.
And they weren't the top. They were not the top guys at the time. I mean, granted, Undertaker was always that leader, but he wasn't always in the title picture on the main spot. And I think that was kind of, for me personally, I think that's what really gave WWE credit more so than WCW. Whereas WWE, the top guy in the company was not always the top guy.
No.
Everybody kind of got their shot at being that top guy.
Right.
Everybody was given a chance. Whereas WCW, you saw a lot of the same guys. Now, my question for you guys is, and this is a very hypothetical question, do you think if WCW would have given the more time to their undercard talent and rotating them into the upper echelons of the company, do you think that WCW would have had more of a shot at surviving?
Absolutely, because it would have brought in fresh stories. It wouldn't have been the same people over and over and over again.
I'm going to have to say no, because they did do that. Booker T.
Towards the end, yes.
Booker T And before anybody says, oh, fucking Vince Russo fucked up, is a piece of fucking shit, I agree, he was garbage as a writer. He did do some good things, and here is one of those good things. If it was not for Vince Russo, Booker T probably would not be where he is today.
A 5-time champion.
Or
Right.
a fucking WWE Hall of Famer.
Right.
So, before everybody says, oh, Vince Russo's a piece of shit, I agree, but he did do some good things. He brought newer talent. He did what Eric Bischoff would not do. And that was
Right.
bring newer talent into the main event card. It was too little, too late.
Mm-hmm.
Before I continue on, Trek and Bobbitt, what do you guys think?
JP hit the nail on the head. I think if WCW would have brought in, other talent, that, like Heather was right about that as well. Like, you wouldn't have the same people over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
Trek?
I agree with Bobbitt. Not only that, but they even stated in the one of the air chapters, I think it was, that every time somebody got over and they didn't want them to get over, they buried them. So it's like, even if they tried to get themselves over, they got run over by the NWO. So they tried to get themselves over, but Bischoff really had no time for it.
The Vince, and I'm glad JP brought it up, because the Vince Russo incident, the reason a lot of people give Vince Russo shit for what he did in WCW, but what you also need to understand is that Vince Russo was going up against a lot of people that had creative control over what their character did. And he was basically Vince Russo, from what I gathered in the episode, is basically Vince Russo said, screw you guys.
Yep.
Right.
We're not doing that.
Even Eric Bischoff said that in 83 weeks.
In 83 weeks. But and if you're talking about the Bash at the Beach 2000 incident, he made mention of the fact that they had already decided on what they were going to do.
Right.
Russo said, fuck you. This is where Russo was wrong.
Yes.
Because you got to remember, Eric Bischoff was fired in, I can't remember when, so he wasn't there. That's when they brought in Vince Russo. They brought Eric Bischoff back to see if he could work with Vince Russo. So, and if you've heard any, like Bruce Pritchard, Eric Bischoff, they talk about Vince Russo, they say, and trust me, he's going to become very prevalent here very shortly in the next few episodes. He becomes very prevalent.
Oh, yes.
He had great ideas. Like Heather would say, hey, don't you think, like, if the paint is chipping on the fucking walls, right? I'm just going to use this as an example. Don't you think we should paint the walls? And then I say, well, what color? And she would have deer lights in her eyes. If Vince Russo would give you an idea, hey, let's paint the walls, but then you ask him what color, and he'd look at you like, I don't know. That's where he could book short term, couldn't book long term, which is why he got fired from WWF.
Right.
So, yeah. So Vince Russo, although he was a fucking shitty ass fucking writer, could not book shit, couldn't book a book to say. He had some good ideas. Some of his ideas were good. The Mama Bagwell, Judy Bagwell on a fucking pole match makes no sense.
Right.
So, yeah.
And to answer your question real quick before we move on here, it wasn't that it was a committee within a wrestling company. This was a committee for Ted Turner Productions, as it was taken over by AOL. They were the committee to try and help stop the bleeding of the entire corporation.
Right, and they even deviated a lot away, but that's for another episode.
Right.
my thing has always been, and they even stated this in the episode itself, had WCW did what they did with Booker T and Diamond Dallas Page after the Vince Russo incident at Bash at the Beach, had they done this 5 years earlier, there was a very good chance that WCW would still be alive today.
Right.
Agreed.
And they even stated this. To me, one of the biggest blows that WCW did is when the Giant actually jumped ship over to WWE. Because this was Big Show the first one, or was he after Chris Jericho?
No, he was first.
Yes.
So Big Show. This is why I kind of get a little bit peeved when people sit there and give Big Show so much shit.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at this guy's career, he was a career of first.
Yep.
He was the first guy in WCW to get over on Hulk Hogan. He was the first member outside of the original 3 to be added into the NWO. He was also the first guy to jump ship to WWE, and proving that WWE at that point was the better product.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
At this point, the Giant, as he was going back then, was very relevant.
Right.
Very, very relevant to wrestling.
True.
Now, when you look at WWE, we can go on and on about. They talked about G Generation X and Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, and they were just kind of allowed to do what they want. Have Vince screaming at them every night because of the shit that they would pull. But I think what my deal is, my thing I thought was kind of neat is that it's not that necessarily these guys had creative control, is that they were allowed to do what they needed to do to get over.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Whereas, no, I'm doing this because I'm protecting my career. These guys were doing, no, let's do it this way to get the whole fucking show over.
Right.
Let's steal the show. My thought process, and I don't, I'm going to ask where you guys stand on it.
Let me answer. Go ahead, think about that question. I want to answer Ace's question. They did talk about that last night.
Yes, he
In fact,
did make
Big
mention
Show
of it.
did. Paul White, which is his real name, did talk about that last night.
Yes, he did.
Paul White said, like Johnny said, he was the first one to go over Hulk Hogan. He was in the NWO. He was working with main event talent. He was making 1/6, better yet, 1/7 of what the guys that he was working with made. So, fuck yeah, he left for more money. Because he was getting paid shit in WCW. So, and plus he was thrown in the main event with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Right away. And look at what he did. It worked.
If you're 7 foot tall, almost 500 pounds, he was fucking athletic as hell.
Yeah, and I'm not yelling at you, so I'm just pointing out that people think that these guys left for money, left for this, left for that. Fucking why do you think Chris Jericho left? He wasn't thrown in the main event. He knew that he was main event talent. Look at what he's doing today.
Yeah.
He proved Eric Bischoff wrong big time.
And Goldberg was one of the ones that really put a stop to Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
Yes. Because he didn't want to work with him because he was too small.
Right. And so my question is, throughout all this, episode, they talked about Vince and how he was a real leader and really focused in on the characters and worked with these guys. Given the contrast to how he was back then and how he is now.
I was hoping this question was coming up. Go ahead.
Oh, where did it go wrong?
Are you talking about now?
Yeah, what like, because to me, seeing this, it makes me miss the old Vince.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna say this, and people don't. Oh my God, he's a fucking Vince guy. Vince is probably still that way, and we've talked about this before. Honestly, I think in the way that Vince's demeanor and body language is, I think he knows that he is giving us shit because he is. This is where WWF or /WWE went wrong. They, and 3 words, they went public.
Right. We talked about this. I don't think it was on the Wrestling Memories. I think it was actually on This Week in Wrestling. We really got into this.
Yeah. He went public, which forced him to have to listen to a bunch of board members and what standards and practices on what they think is better for the company, because they are stockholders. They have a say-so in what happens in the company. That's what happened to WWF. That's what's going on with WWF right now. Yes, Vince likes fucking big muscled guys. There's more big muscled guys than fucking Roman Reigns. The board members think that Roman Reigns is probably the best choice. Yes, Vince has to say that because he's a fucking WWE guy. We're not in these board meetings, and I sit here and say this. We sit here and shit on Vince. But do we really know the whole fucking story? He ain't gonna tell us the whole story. He's the one up front saying, I'm in charge. So he's the one getting shit on. But behind the scenes, I guarantee it, that's not the way it is. I guarantee it.
And the other thing that I noticed, and we recently just had this issue come to light. The wrestlers back then seemed to care more about what the fans thought. And not to say that there's not wrestlers out there today that don't care about the fans, but is it just me, or is it? Do you see a difference in the wrestler mentality that it is today than it was back then?
Well, see, this
2 words.
Go ahead.
Laziness and complacency.
Yep. I will say this, and then I'm going to let Bobbitt elaborate. I'm sure Bobbitt hasn't said anything. I'm going to say this one thing. I have watched the body language of Roman Reigns over the last 3-4 years. He has that body language of, you can't fucking touch me. Vince wants me to be the top guy, or WWE wants me to be the top guy, so why in the fuck should I have to fucking be able to cut a good promo? He don't care. You want to talk about laziness and complacency? Monday night when he cut that fucking promo, and it was that segment, the beginning segment of Raw. That part right fucking there, when he got on there and said, what, I can't remember what he said, but he got fucking booed.
Yeah.
As part of the fucking Shield because of what he said. And it's how he said it is what fucking pisses me off about Roman Reigns. That's probably the way he feels, because he's allowed to do that, because who's gonna tell fucking Vince otherwise? Or who's gonna tell the board otherwise?
Real quick before we move on to Bobbitt, just want to give a shout out to Mr. Basement.
Yeah,
Guy's been in the hospital for a while. Man, we hope you get to feeling better soon. We're rooting for you, bud. Bobbitt, what you JP said you had some you wanted to elaborate on this. What is your take on this whole thing?
Well, first of all, back to the whole Vince thing. JP's right. As soon as Vince went public, he pretty much gave the board his balls, because Vince cannot do anything without the fucking board. And back then, Vince only answered to himself because it wasn't a public company yet. As soon as he went public, shit went fucked, basically. Yep. And the superstars now, like, you gotta think, back then, they didn't know if they was gonna have a job, because they was competing with WCW.
Right.
Loser went out of business, pretty much.
Right.
So they had to care about their character, and they had to listen to the fans, because if it wasn't for the fans, WCW would have won the Monday Night War. So they had no other option but to do it.
Right.
Where WWE doesn't have competition. Now, their superstars can be lazy. They can pretty much do what, they don't have to do anything, because they don't have to work for anything. Their guaranteed paychecks are guaranteed.
They do, but it's just they're. It's hard for me to say. Like, again, I'm speculating. I don't know if this is true, but just you got to think about it on both sides of the fence. Yes, Vince is the one up front. He's the one that's taking all the fucking gumption. But is that really what's going on, or is the board members actually fucking telling him, no, you have to do this, or we're gonna pull our stock, or whatever they're gonna fucking do? Are they gonna pull their fucking creative card, so to speak?
My thing is that I think a lot of it was, especially back then, the timing was just right for WWE. They had good booking, they had good storylines, good writers, and the fans got behind it. What really killed WCW was poor booking decisions, which pissed off fans. And they started leaving in droves, much like what you're seeing today.
Right.
And now this is more of a current. This is more of current day. Excuse me. Than has to do with in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that? Are you seeing a correlation between what happened with WCW and what's going on with WWE right now? Is history kind of repeating itself?
To a certain extent, yes. But is WWE gonna fucking go out of business? No. That's the shame part. That's gonna be the, because I mean, you look at WCW, it was a broadcasting company that owned a wrestling entity.
Right.
The broadcasting company, Ted Turner, and it's on 83 Weeks, and he did not give a shit as long as he was making a profit. If he was making money, he didn't care.
Right.
Which is kind of what WWE is doing, but when it comes to Ted Turner, as long as WCW didn't have their own budget, to be honest with you. That's another thing. That's another reason that killed the company. They weren't allowed. They just fucking opened checkbook, fucking cashed out, bump, boom, do whatever. But they were making money, so he didn't give a shit. So he just didn't focus on it. He let Eric Bischoff run the show. So
what I thought was interesting is that, compared to what we see today with the undercard versus what we got back then, is almost like night and day. The undercard back then, even in WCW in the early days, was interesting, relevant. It made you want to tune in and watch the show. And honestly, a lot of I think they even mentioned it during the episode, that some of the best storylines, like we have stated multiple times, some of the best storylines in WWE and in WCW weren't even had anything to do with the top guys.
Goldust had one of the more intriguing fucking storylines at that time. Just this story in general. To be honest
You know,
with you.
And then, what really kind of, and of course, they're getting to the point in these episodes where they're now talking more about the end of what goes on. And you had, especially like in WWE, during that time, which I didn't realize this, but towards the end of the war, they started focusing on tag teams again in WWE. I had no idea. It didn't even dawn on me that during the bulk of the Attitude Era that tag teams were not really focused on.
No, they were not.
Right.
And then you get one of the most talked about matches in WWE when it came to tag teams. Matt Hardy, the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys, WrestleMania, the ladder match for the tag titles.
That because they talked about it, like you said, they talked about that. Tag team wrestling really wasn't a big thing. A lot like it is today. It's like nobody gives a crap about the fucking the tag team divisions anymore. That match, even though I don't care for all of that stuff, the story that they were telling inside that fucking match was so good. Was so good. Because you know how I am with the high spots. I don't care for them. I do not care for them. I really don't. That doesn't make a match for me. If you can tell me a good story inside the ring, and if it involves a fucking chair, a ladder, or a table, then so be it. But tell me the story. Just try not to fucking kill each other in the process.
Right. My thing was, as then, especially back then, is that, again, sometimes the tag team, back then the tag team was almost as prestigious as the world champion.
Mm-hmm. And because of that match.
And that's what's so sad to see today is that the tag team titles are not seen as almost an equal to being world champion.
Right. Agreed.
And what I've noticed is that especially back then, they were doing everything possible to win the war.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Now that there's no more war to be had,
right?
There's no reason to put emphasis on these things.
On anything, really. On anything. You're hitting it right on the head. Go ahead.
To me, so when you talk about the Attitude Era and the Monday Night War, we always talk about the greats that realistically, the Stone Colds, the Hulk Hogan, Sting, Undertaker, The Rock, Mankind. When you really bog it down, this is what made me realize that this is what I really learned from this episode, is the undercard was the literal backbone of both companies.
Mm-hmm. The money getters were the main events. The literal backbone of the... I'll use this analogy real quick. WrestleMania 6. What was the money getter? Hogan Warrior, right?
Yeah.
What was the best match that night?
Wasn't it? Was that
Savage fucking
Savage and Steamboat?
Undercard. So right there, that tells you can't have 20 fucking main events in a fucking show. WWE. You can have 18 undercard matches in one main event. Just because the main event is what you want the main event to be, just because you want Roman to be in the main event doesn't mean that he should be. He can be in the undercard. Some of his best matches are when he's not main eventing.
Yeah.
Some of Roman's best matches are when he's not main event. The match between him and Bobby Lashley was really good. I enjoyed watching that match. It didn't.
Poor Heather sitting there, or just kind of leaning back so she don't get hit.
I'm sorry, I get my hands going when I'm talking. And I do want to say this. There's a lot of people in the chat saying, well, Raw sucked this past week. Actually, it wasn't that bad of a show. It wasn't great, but it wasn't unwatchable. I didn't want to fall asleep. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I really did. SmackDown was really good. NXT for me is just whatever. It's there.
Dozovich was the best part of the night.
Yes, Dozovich is gold to me. I fucking love Weeble Wobble guy. Yeah, I love that guy, man. He's fucking great. But it wasn't that bad of a show. Could have been better. But there's one. As long as they can do what they're going to do with the Shield, what I think they're going to do, I'm fucking okay with it. What they did is they planted a seed, and hopefully they plant that seed and they do the right thing. Don't troll the fans. Also, with the fans, with them taking the signs away, yeah, I get it. I get it. But here's the thing. That tells me that I'm fucking right, that they think that Becky Lynch is a fucking heel, and they want Charlotte to be the babyface. Because why would they take a fucking sign away?
Right.
That says, I support Becky, not Charlotte. Boo the woo. I'm going to continue to say this. Let WWE try to tell their story. But if you keep shitting on it, then they're going to fail. That storyline is going to fail if you keep shitting on it. And I hate to say this, and I'm not telling fans what to do. Again, I'm not telling fans what to do. Cheering Becky is ruining the storyline. I get it. You want to cheer Becky. Yes, she deserves to be the champion. But they're trying to tell a heel story with her. And by people cheering her, it's not working. I see them taking the title right the fuck off of her and putting it right back on fucking Charlotte.
Now, here's my question, and this is more because I'm thinking back to how things were back then, where they did try to turn people heel, but they listened a lot to the fans. In fact, they determined a lot of times they determined who was the heel and who was the face based on fan reaction.
Yep.
Do you think that them going away from that is what is? And I'm not blaming wholly WWE for this problem. I mean, the fans too are part of the problem. Mm-hmm. But do you think that them wanting to stick with certain storylines and not adapting to fan reaction is causing more harm than good?
It's causing more harm than good, because look what it's doing. It is. To me, it's causing more harm than good.
Because I would, thinking back then, if I was to put some of these guys and gals back then, during the Attitude Era, during the Monday Night War, Roman Reigns would already be a heel.
Fuck yeah, he would. Fucking Becky Lynch would too be. Which is the point I'm trying to make.
Right. And two, they would, I think that also with the storyline, there was a lot more freedom to do things, which is why I keep stressing to everybody that one of the biggest problems with WWE right now is they are massively affected by culture.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They are massively affected by culture. Whereas in the past, when WWE bucked against the trend of what was socially acceptable, when people got pissed off about what they were doing and people not liking what DX was doing, or having The Undertaker string up Stephanie McMahon on a fucking Undertaker symbol and try to marry her and shit, they were just like, well, They're either going to love it or hate it.
Right.
But people were talking about it. And whereas nowadays, and this is what I keep seeing from a lot of people that talk wrestling, you get a lot of, well, what do you think about this story? I don't give a shit about that. I don't really care about that. I don't really care to see that match. Back then, I didn't care if it was Scotty 2 Hottie and fucking Rikishi. You wanted to see what happened in that match.
Mm-hmm. True. Yep.
And that's what really, you know, like JP has said, this is what really Wrestling Memories is about, is talking about what we knew to be back then and comparing it to what is going on today.
Right.
And this is the thing. What I've always thought is until WWE has a legitimate threat to their company, you're never going to see a change.
Nope. And it's not Ring of Honor. It's not New Japan. And we keep going over as to why that will never happen, because it's too much of a cultural change. The New Japan pro wrestling guys are not going to change just to suit our culture. They're not. They're going to continue to tell their stories inside of the ring and cut their promos on screen. Not in the middle of the fucking ring like WWE does.
And trust me, next week's episode, we'll be getting into a lot more stuff about the analytical side of it, because this is the next week's episode really talks about what exactly the pinpoint reasons why things went south with WCW.
And that is isn't that the Click? What was that?
Huh?
I believe it is the curtain call.
Is it is it the Click?
It might be. If it is, then I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Because there's 4 episodes left.
Well, then it probably is the Click next.
Yep, it's the Click. And you kind of did. I mean, that is kind of one of the problems that we have today. The curtain call was a problem.
Right.
It broke down the third, or what did they call it? The fourth wall, or whatever the fuck it was?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's always called the fourth wall.
Yeah, they broke the fourth wall by doing what they did. Hey, wait. Diesel's a bad guy. Why is Shawn Michaels hugging him?
Right.
Because, and here's the problem with it, people can't depict realism from a fucking goddamn acting fucking storyline. I wrestled in high school. Okay? Did I hate my opponent across the way? No, actually, some of my best friends were wrestlers on another team. High school wrestling around where I live, we all knew each other. We all wrestled together. We went to camps together. Some of my biggest rivals, man. I mean, I wrestled with them. So, and we hung out together. We go to parties together. Wink, wink. You know, shit like that. So, to sit there and say that these guys can't be friends outside, Jim Cornette, you fucking idiot. You're the reason why. You and fucking Bill Watts are the reason why this stigma got fucking put on, because you feel, oh my god, a babyface can't hang out with the fucking bad guy. Well, what happens when that bad guy turns into a good guy, and next thing you know, they're hanging out? So now they're friends? I don't fucking get it. You want to confuse fans even more, man. That's how you do it.
So with that being all said, overall, I think this was one of the better episodes, actually.
Yeah.
Because it really was, and I think it really shed some light on some things that your undercard, if your undercard's bad, eventually it's going to cause, well, like what you see now, a very stagnant product. Bobbitt, any final thoughts?
No, just a really good episode, and it just shows you how things back then was completely different from now, and it'll never be that way again, unfortunately.
And you can just go. Thank you. Trek, any final thoughts?
That's pretty much what everybody said. I mean, I was watching Nitro today, first 2 episodes. I'm like, why can't we have this back? I mean, it makes me wish we had competition again because it brought out the best in WWE, and for a while, both companies did really good products. It's just like, now it's like, so.
Heather.
Nothing really further to add. Everybody else said everything.
Poor Heather. JP, what about you?
Not much, but I am going to say this, and if you look at what Basement is saying, I have been saying this ever since the Shawn Michaels and Undertaker thing happened. They need to let the old... If WWE wants to move forward, they can't until they put the old guard to rest. I've been saying, I get it. You have not seen, Australians have not seen The Undertaker fucking wrestle Shawn Michaels. I get it. But from what I'm hearing, they're going to carry this over into fucking WrestleMania. That being said, this whole Australia thing is a bogus fucking line for them to say, hey, these people in Australia have never seen this. I think this would be a good idea. I get that. Fine. But if you're going to fucking carry this on over into WrestleMania, fuck off. Totally agree with you, Basement, on that. They need to fucking stop. They need to fucking stop this fucking bullshit. Start using your fucking other talent. The intensity that I seen fucking Ty Dillinger wrestle with on fucking Tuesday was great. This guy deserves a push. Not Shawn Michaels. He's already had his push. He's fucking 50. The Undertaker doesn't need his push. He's 53. Triple H runs the company. Do your job. Fucking tell Vince to fucking stop. Period. That's all I have to say.
So with that, guys, we're going to go over a few programming notes. JP, Heather, you guys have anything going on, or are you doing Raging tonight or anything like that?
I am indeed.
She is indeed.
All right, so guys, what time are you going live?
8 o'clock.
Hey, so here in about 30 minutes, be sure to go over to Tattoo Mistress channel for Raging Inc. And we're probably going to be discussing a lot of shit over there tonight. I can already feel it coming on. Of course, tune in Friday for This Week in Wrestling, where we JP and Bobbitt. Sometimes I am able to be there or go over the news of the week and what kind of, on a general overview. And we usually are a little bit more, it's a little bit less structured than what this is. Also, be sure to check out Mike Bobbitt's channel. They got Behind the Reels, and also that's usually where This Week in Wrestling goes anyway, right?
No, it goes on its own channel.
It's got its own channel.
No. I was talking about This Week in Wrestling is on Bobbitt's channel, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes, This Week in Wrestling is always on Bobbitt's channel.
And so, real quick before we get to my stuff, JP, Heather, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at JPBaker91, Instagram and Snapchat the same. You can also find me on this channel here, of course. I'll be on Raging Inc. I don't know how much. It depends on what they're going to talk about. I don't want to rage about what. It'll get ugly. You can find me on Derailed on Saturdays, and I'll be streaming the football game on Sunday again. So, and possibly a pennant-winning Brewers team on, if they do. If it's on Sunday, then I won't stream it, but I'll keep track of it. That's where you can find me.
You find
Heather.
Shut up.
You can find me on Twitter at Goonie20 and then on the YouTube channel Tattooed Mistress or the Tattooed Masses, either one you would like. And of course, Behind the Reels with Real Movie Review with Bobbitt. And of course, I'm always here on the Cold Bone Show. So
Now, Mr. Mike Bobbitt, where can the lovely people out there on YouTube find you, good sir? Bobbitt.
you're muted, Bobbitt.
Yeah, you're muted, brother.
Anyway, Foulmouth Bobbitt channel, the Behind the Reels channel, the Cold Bone Show, Derailed, and I'm gonna be on Foulmouth here soon. So yeah.
Nah. Trek, what about you? Where can people find you? Yeah, and I don't think you have a channel, so.
I have a channel, but I usually just share videos that I think are cool on YouTube and stuff. It's the same name. It's at Brendan Casholi on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, all that good stuff. I'm usually on the show here with you guys when I don't have to work, which is cool, which I do work next Thursday, so I don't think I'll be on next week. But
yeah, thanks for letting us know, Trek. No.
Hey,
I'm usually on like.
Go ahead, Trek. Sorry.
I'm usually on like Monday and Tuesday with these guys, and on Fridays sometimes try to get home in time for Wrestling Memories, and of course we do the
Cody, you can
the
fuck
special
off.
events fest. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Johnny.
No,
Keep
I'll just
going.
take care.
Keep going.
I'm usually on the Sunday night shows with Heather and JP when we do the live reaction reviews to the pay-per-views.
Are you done?
Yep.
Oh, so hey, those videos that you share on your fucking channel, are they of Detroit? The city that you think is beautiful?
No, they're not.
Oh.
Unless they're cop.
Okay, fair enough.
And as always, guys, you can find me on Twitter at Johnny Sinister. You can also find me here on the Cold Bone Show. Oh, usually every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sundays, sometimes even on Fridays. So you got, and then also be sure to come out on Saturday. We'll be live streaming gameplay videos over on my channel at the same name, Johnny Sinister. Really appreciate you guys coming out. With that being said, that's going to do it for us here, guys, on Wrestling Memories. Thank you all so much for coming out. I greatly appreciate it. Hope tune in next week for episode 36, and we'll see you guys next time. So be sure, as always, to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon so YouTube can know. So YouTube will let you know that we're going fucking live, because otherwise they ain't gonna do shit. Yeah. With that being said, guys, thank you guys so much. We greatly appreciate it. You guys have a wonderful evening. Be sure to come over in 30 minutes to the Tattoo Mistress's channel for Raging Inc. And you guys have a good evening. Bye-bye now.